Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury.
Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. And your main podcast on a Tuesday, we have a full house, a full complement of Arsenal podcast talent. Rohan Jivad is here. Hello.
Hello!
George Vusas is here. Hello.
Hello, hello.
That was significantly less. Can you do a Rohan? Hello.
Do a hiya!
Hiya!
Okay, on second thoughts, maybe don't do that. Welcome back to the main podcast. How are you? Hope you're doing very, very well. If this is your first time on the Cannon podcast, make sure you like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple, make sure you leave us a little review or Rohan will kill you. Hopefully a positive one or a negative one. All helps. A little reminder from producer MJ, turn on your notifications as well, wherever you are. We are also, I don't know if you guys saw last month where we responded, George and I did we should get you on this, Rohan. We did a Rate My Take where we started to get the patrons on the show. They were relatively spicy. So we're going to do another one of those. If you want to get your take on the show, then make sure you're a patron and we'll give you some instructions coming up. But look out for that on Patreon and YouTube memberships. We're going to do another one episode of those relatively soon. But we are here to chat all things Arsenal. We want to get into the Pompey game. We want to get into some fullback usage. We want to get into Nwaneri. We want to get into the Carabao Cup game. And of course, we're going to take your questions. But chaps, first and foremost, Rohan, George, how are you?
I am fantastic. I'll tell you what has annoyed me, though, the past week. It's been so icy, so I've not been able to run. Did go on a run on Sunday.
And famous runs.
It's impeding my high rocks training, though. That's what it was. So that was annoying. But it seems like it's not going to be icy now. So
when is the high rocks thing?
March 26th in Mechelen in Belgium.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, you did. Oh, yeah,
what's
it's
the
going
distance?
abroad.
Yeah. Sorry, George?
What's the distance that you're doing?
Well, like in terms of the train, in terms of what Hyrox is.
Yeah. Like, is it like a run, like a 10K?
So it's 8 kilometer run in total, but it's spread over 1 kilometer intervals, and then you do 8 strength training exercises, like 1,000 meter rows. Then there's like I think it's 150 kilograms sled push, and then it's
why are you doing this to yourself?
Oh, I love it. I love
you
that.
Just have an easy life, mate.
I'm thinking I wanted to do it in the UK. I wanted to do it in London or Manchester, but it was all booked out. It's crazy the amount of people that participate in it. And I thought Belgium. I've never been there before. Tick another country off.
It's beautiful, apparently, Belgium.
Yeah, are very known for their chocolate, so I'll be tucking into their dairy milk.
Do you know what I realised we haven't had in a while, Rohan? Is a word of the day. We need to get back onto that. If I don't want to put you on the spot, but we need a word of the day.
Can you give us a word of the day?
You're putting me on the spot. I did genuinely use ultracrepidarian in conversation the other day.
It's such a good word, though.
It's really, it has entered my vocabulary. It's excellent. We woke up this morning, boys, to the news that Mertesacker is going to be leaving Arsenal. A statement from Arsenal earlier on today. At the end of the season, so it's not sort of immediately, but we got a little statement saying Mertesacker, the club's academy manager, has confirmed he will leave Arsenal at the end of the season after 8 years in the role. Per's overseen our men's academy since 2018 with a vision to develop distinctive, strong young gunners, young players who've gone on to make their mark with our own men's first team, pursue successful careers at other clubs, or follow different paths to fulfill their potential with an excellent grounding and education. I think... Firstly, credit to him, because I think from where we were, and George will come to you in just a second, I'm not a sort of academy expert in the same way you are, but I feel like from where we were in terms of the success, probably from the start of where Mikel was to now, there's been some notable successes in terms of the development of players from the academy to the first team. Obviously, Max Dowman, Marley Salmon coming through, maybe talk about in the Portsmouth game. Saka, the obvious one, but Ethan and Mars, etc., even other names as well. How did you take this news? Because I suppose from an don't want to use the word casual perspective, but people who don't follow the academy as much, I think have probably felt largely Mertesacker's done a really, really good job, and that's sort of my feeling. So I was a bit like, oh, it's a shame. But sort of looking a little bit deeper into group chats and conversations with people who really, really follow the academy, there's been a bit of a sort of, okay, this is also an opportunity to step forward here as well. So I'd love you to sort of go into that.
I think you have to speak honestly about the reign. in different phases, because I do think some of this has been lost, you know, in terms of some of the work that Per Mertesacker did. And I don't think people remember how horrible the state of our academy was back in 2020 and before, as far as what we were doing and relative to the rest of the league. And I don't think people understand that, you know, Per was responsible for modernizing our approach to unifying a lot of the pillars that we did. I think in early podcasts, we're now, I can't believe it, it's been like 3 years of the pod, but we've talked about the Arsenal way of playing, which was defined, people forget, by Per Mertesacker with Marcel Lucassen, who was our head of coaching development, in terms of the pillars of what we felt like an academy player at Arsenal should look like. And you know,
and you can see that, by the way. Just sorry to cut you, but you can tell a Hale End kid, which I think is a big compliment, because that's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just as simple as saying like we have certain non-negotiables that we stand for, but really, if you do look back at it, Per Mertesacker was responsible for setting non-negotiables that Arteta then came in and to do as a coach, that we now say was the bedrock to our success. And people completely forget that we didn't have those principles in place prior to Per. So him coming in was really important, not just from a culture change. Like, I think sometimes I look at the timeline and a lot of people are just mischaracterizing Per's reign as basically saying, well, he cared about the person more than the player. And he really talked quite a bit about life after football, and if you don't make football, and that was the extent to his influence. And that's completely false. It really isn't the extent, and it very much undermines a lot of the early pillar work that he had done in order to identify what players are. I mean, Miles, Ethan, and Max aren't developed if you don't have a clear identity of what type of player you want to become and you want to produce. And so from a development standpoint, there was a lot of early pillars that he was responsible, along with Marcel Lucassen, for defining. Then I would say his reign then kind of drifted. That was maybe the first 2-3 years of Per, which I thought he did his best work for Arsenal, the most modern work for Arsenal, the most advancements. Then I'd say the next 2-3 years was redefining our youth recruitment. And I think only, I would say confidently now, or in the last year, is something where Arsenal have really started to feel the fruits of that labor, in which we started having different performance centers in Scotland, starting to recruit different people and change some of the recruitment staff, as far as identifying gaps in the market. Like, again, Scotland and Ireland is something that no club really has identified as a bedrock of talent, yet Arsenal have. And guys, it's been successful. And I don't think fans, and I don't want to use that in a derogatory word, but the casual fans may not understand that a lot of our work with Cheedak O'Neill, Mark Hamill, you know, there's a lot of talent and players that we've recruited from the Ireland Academy that we identified as a gap, and that came from Per identifying Phil Cohen from Rangers, you know? So this uptick in our recruitment took a phase. One thing that has been lagging throughout the entirety of his tenure and has not been able to be solved has been loan developments, as well as our approach to youth contracts. Those two things are quite unique to Arsenal. Tons of people, I've talked about it enough on the Cannon podcast, so I don't want to relitigate, but this idea that we let talent go for free that definitely could be earning us money and resources is something that we tend to do quite often. We haven't had a huge track record of successful loans and loans being done in a good manner. So that's a gap that I don't think Per ever quite solved. But this idea that Per was basically reduced to a ambassador role that was just really well liked, I don't think is fair. And I think that he did a lot to push the academy into a modern lens. But I do think the academy needed another voice and another head to take it to be a dominant player in the modern world. Like, Per, I would say, is responsible for bringing us to the light. And I don't know if he was the one to then redefine the light. But he definitely brought us into it, and he deserves massive praise for his work there. 8 years is a long time in a job that I think, really, guys, he's predating Mikel, right? Like, I mean, when you start looking at some of this stuff, he's one of the more longer serving ambassadors and you know, directors at the club. So it's quite significant. And I don't believe, sorry guys, that this was planned. I think Per has gone to the club, and you know, I think it was coming from Per. And a lot of what I've read is not that they were looking to move Per on. It was more to supplement him with different directors, sure. But I don't think it was to replace Per. So this has come in that sense as well. I think it's coming from him that he needs a new chapter. And I would probably agree.
Yeah, the statement sort of alludes. Well, it doesn't quite confirm either way. It just sort of says Per is leaving, and Richard Garlick's comments are that we're fortunate to have retained Per. Sort of we're sad to see him go, but Per says now it's time for me to move on, etc., etc. So maybe it's slightly putting the ball in Per's court. Yeah, Rohan, look, in terms of the exact structuring of the academies, I know that's not a place that you or I really, really look into, but I think what's interesting from my perspective, the casual, is this thing of a very, very clear identity, and I'm sure there was a clear structure beforehand, and I don't wish to say Per Mertesacker was the person who decided that this is exactly how an Arsenal player will play, but I think the message getting through to the everyday fan, I think almost every single Arsenal fan will have heard of strong young gunners. Like almost every single one would know that phrase, exactly what it is, whatever. But that messaging is really, really important. And then when you look at the players, I'm always really impressed with the academy kids, that they appear to have a fearlessness. That's the thing I see in every single player. A player who comes in, I will always refer back to that moment with Max Dowman on the touchline at Anfield, and you're just going, I know it's Max Dowman, but that is the epitome of a player just like, I'm ready. I'm ready, whatever phase. And I didn't always feel that with academy kids coming through. I think the physical quality is a big thing for a lot of kids at Hale End. Not all perfectly shaped exactly when they come into the first team, but players who you feel as though can manage first team football. The way they use their body, getting across, Miles is probably the archetypal one, but Ethan has it and Max has it, etc. Players who really know how to use their body, and then the technical quality and the sort of the versatility of position, I would say, is a big thing. Specifically on sort of someone leaving. Not necessarily on Per specifically, but I have been quite impressed with Arsenal in recent years. When someone leaves, I often have a bit of a what's going to happen? But I feel like we've usually upskilled. It's funny how how would we have spoken about Edu maybe 3 years ago compared to now, and I'm always cautious of that, because it's not just old guy bad, new guy good, but we have tended to get these appointments right. So I'm really interested to see what the next phase of it will be, because I do take people who are more into the academy, their points about loans and pathways and stuff, and I'm curious to see how that develops. But your reflections as well.
No, I think that's a really good point in terms of like the next step that Arsenal have made in various different appointments has always tended to be one that's positive and one that has been an improvement to the previous one. Like we go all the way back to, it was the Raul Sanllehi and Sven Mislintat days, in which there was a clear difference in terms of how those two saw the game. One was more contact-based, the other one was more data-driven. And there was, it was not a partnership and a relationship that really developed and became a strong force for us. And then obviously Edu becomes an integral part. And whatever we think about Edu, that is certainly an improvement to what we had before. And then now we've got Andrea Berta as well. Andreas Berta? I think I got that wrong the other time.
That's just Andrea. You're in your head about it now. You're just panicking.
Berta. I mean, if you look at the way that we have operated in the summer window in comparison to previous windows, it's chalk and cheese. And again, you're seeing an improvement there. Managerial wise, Unai Emery to Mikel Arteta. Josh Kroenke's becoming a lot more integral now in terms of driving Arsenal and being someone in which the fans can relate to as well. I think Josh Kroenke, every single time, more often than not, when he's spoken, I've really felt that he gets it. And that does mean a lot to me. And I think with Mertesacker, there's a lot of parallels to what George has said there in terms of with Mikel, in terms of rebuilding, modernising, developing a culture. That's what Mikel did. But then when it comes to Mertesacker, can you then take that next step up? That's the question, because I am a casual, very much a casual in terms of the academy. But back in the day, when I was at uni, I'd watch a lot more of the under 21s and whatnot. And Reece Nelson was someone that I absolutely loved. But during that time, which I was consistently watching academy football, I always had the feeling of, it's like 1 in 20 who will make it, I don't get that feeling anymore. I get that feeling of, there's certainly more that can absolutely make it and break through at a time in which Arsenal are competing for much higher honours, right? And I think the development of the players has been something that's really, really strong. And he's been integral to that. What I will say, though, is, and maybe this is where the critique could be, and again, a casual, but I've always felt like we've not been able to leverage that well enough. You know, the quality that we have within the academy, where if you're not going to make it at Arsenal, we need to be a lot more proactive with the loans. And not just any loan, a loan that makes sense. Because we are not in a position in which, you know, these players aren't good in the academy. These players could play for a lot of teams in which stylistically it also will benefit us. And I don't think we've done that enough of over the years. When we sent out a player on loan, I've not understood the idea behind it of, I don't really get what he's going to learn there. And also there comes the other part of it where we've had a player who's just in the academy for too long, in which he's not going to learn anything new. He needs to play men's first team football. And I feel like we've not leveraged the quality of the academy that has developed enough, both from, you know, in terms of breaking through at Arsenal, but also from a pure business perspective, because it is a business, you know, and that's something that we certainly haven't maximised. You know, like Aidan Heaven, for example, someone, you know, who's starting for Manchester United now. Did we maximise someone like that? Amari Cozier-Dubry as well. There's a lot of examples there in which people don't care about because Arsenal are doing well. But I think it's still worth noting it's an area of growth and improvement that we've not been able to do.
It's relative, isn't it? You know, and you might say, well, who cares about £1 million? Me. Like, you might not care about it on the scale of signing, you know, Semenyo or whatever, but, you know, it really matters at academy level. So, yeah, I mean, there's Louis Copley signed a new professional contract and went out to Crawley Town. You know, there's some examples of things shifting. But, yeah, I think just to close off also on the sort of the development point, you could even look at like Juliet Slot, I think was appointed in 22 or 21.
Yes.
George will probably be able to tell me. Yeah. And, you know, before that, I was never, as a fan, I was never thinking about the commercial side of things, and she's taken steps and steps and steps. And, you know, if she ever left, you'd hope that this hierarchy of points even better and could go even further. So it's, you know, it is exciting. George, before we move on, I feel like you've got
just because I think people, we need to remember that you need to fix your own house before you look at buying other properties first. And I think that part of the analysis has escaped a lot of people when you're looking at what Per was responsible for. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize some of the pillars that he had done, because I don't think people remember, but we were talking about them in podcasts as revolutionary at the time, and really highlighting the impact of what that would have, like not just this idea of strong young gunners, but what were those principles that we keep doing? So not just in vague terms, like encouraging being a student of the game, understanding why you do certain actions as opposed to being told what to do, the emphasis on physical aspects, efficient movement, athletic development. As far as footballing actions go, mastering specific technical and tactical aspects of the game, having a mindset, cultivating a championship mentality. What do you need in order to do that? Discipline, leadership, dedication. These synonyms that we just throw around as buzzwords, but the how to get there was something the Arsenal Academy didn't talk about. And, you know, when Marcel Lucassen had come in and, you know, you talk about these youth coaches, which I believe it was like Liam Morrow and other youth coaches that we had, people couldn't come to tell Per or other people what is Arsenal's way of playing. And I don't think people remember, but typically it was just a remnant of really the 4-2-3-1 system that Arsene would do. Like whatever Arsene did, the academy would just replicate as far as system went. But, you know, Per came in and said, well, that's not really a way to do it. You know, the core principle of having a philosophy over a system, believing that it should be fixed and that the 4-4-2, the number shouldn't matter. That's basically, guys, zones over formations. That's a concept that everybody wants to attribute to Mikel. But guys, that came from Marcel Lucassen and Per Mertesacker years before Mikel walked through the door. And he was responsible for modernizing that approach as far as the academy went, right? And doing those things. And when I talk about like fixing our home, it was because we weren't producing these talents enough because we didn't have a philosophy that we believed in. And setting through that was really important. Once we did, I felt like you could say Per was responsible for creating a much more sustainable tail-end production line. Now, I don't think that was the case prior to Per. After that, you could say Arsenal's recruitment of youth was something that was near enough non-existent prior to Per. At this point, I wouldn't say it's operating at exceptional levels, but I think over the last year, we've really shown massive improvements and even dipping into the international market with the Holger twins right now. But we've already set the bedrock as far as youth recruitment goes. And I think we started changing things in the last 18 months. So that's positive as a change. I think the loan and the player contract is a deeper issue at Arsenal that has actually developed for years. You know, you guys had mentioned Louis Copley. I would throw out Dan Casey as a top example of a talent that we should have kept. but lost. And a lot of it had to do with our contract management at that point. And it had to do with some certain rules that we believe that we don't offer longer term contracts, whereas other clubs like Manchester City and Chelsea, they seem more willing to offer longer term contracts and develop the loan market. And it's more about a vision for development that I think is different from Arsenal's. So that's, I think, the future that Per never necessarily identified. But he basically ironed out our domestic production line. He kind of ironed out our recruitment principles that we're just now seeing the fruits of. And I would argue what we need from the next person is that vision on development to complete the infinity stone of youth development, really, because I feel confident that HLN will provide us consistent talent at this point, and it's happened over years. I feel confident that the recruitment has been done right. We really recruited some really top talent beyond the Holger twins that I don't want to bore. I would go to the youth pods because we've talked about them there.
Yep.
But moving forward, I think that's something that we could demand. And, there's some really interesting coaches at Chelsea that have not been treated right in the last, 5-6 months. And they're responsible for creating Cobham. And I would just end on this. We should be looking forward. Like, if I'm the club, I'm looking at trying to steal the best talent. And Cobham looks ripe with a power struggle that seems to be happening right now. There's this one coach, Suleiman, who had been there for like 20 years and has been relegated to like the loan manager department, seen as a major demotion. I would be looking to recruit that type of talent and those things.
I think he's the U18. I was looking at him today. He's the U18 coach, but I mean,
Yes.
regardless, there's there's a lot of talent out there, and I think ultimately we are shopping in that. We should be looking at Bayern and Madrid, and that's again, we say it at the first team level of sort of we want the best in class, and we should be looking at that from youth perspective. But look, we'll put that there. Really curious to see who they move forward with, but it's really exciting because there's big strides to be made, I think, and some ultimately profits to be made to some degree. The very very final thought on this. I think sometimes it's like, oh, the player didn't make it at Arsenal, therefore they didn't make it. Sorry, if I met someone in the street that said, "Oh, I play for like Crawley Town," I'd be like, "You've made it as a pro footballer. Yeah. Fair play to you." Like, and that. So we have to sort of set the relative scale, right? Let's move forward to Pompey. Play up, Pompey, play up. Was sort of set, Rohan, wasn't it, to be a bit of a disaster afternoon when that first goal went in, and I was sort of thinking, oh.
Were you actually worried though? You weren't.
No, but I was a bit like, please don't let it be one of those afternoons. I don't, and this is one of the things that I'm really feeling about this team at the moment is the maturity, and we'll talk about like Mikel Merino and whatever. But I'm really feeling mature performances, which can sometimes be boring, by the way, and I think is part of the sort of the boring conversation. And are we creating enough chances and blah 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 blah. But I do feel a maturity to this team, and I wasn't sat there going, this team's going to fall apart. But I was worried, like, is it going to be one of those afternoons? But it wasn't. We won 4-1. We've now drawn Wigan at home in the fourth round. That happened just before we started recording. Thankfully. You say this now, relatively easy game at home against League One opposition. Let's talk sort of some individuals that came out of that game. Firstly, the return at last, Rohan, of Kai Havertz. Even just in a couple of moments, I spoke on the Instant Reaction about this.
I saw your tweet.
Yeah, you're just like, thank the Lord, thank the heavens. He's back. I'll let you go. Thoughts on Kai Havertz's return?
Oh, it was silky, wasn't it? So silky. Just every touch was just beautiful. And I loved Mikel's comments after as well in terms of what he had to say about him.
I was going to say, some indirects.
But it's one of those ones where, like, maybe it's one you have to listen to what he said as a part, because I've read what he said. I've not listened to what he said, so it'd be interesting to see the tone in terms of how he's kind of projected that. But I don't think there's any.
I listened. Yeah, basically he was set up with the question, and it was kind of like, I don't think it was as out of the blue as some people were taking it as like a comment to Gyökeres or whatever. But I think it was Martin Keown who said, "What about Havertz?" I was watching him at the end of it, and he said a similar thing. So yeah.
I think Mikel's always been someone who protects his players, consistently, and so I'm not surprised by that. But in terms of Havertz, I've always said, mate, like, the only thing that worries me about Kai Havertz is the effects of the injuries, because he's been out for a year pretty much, and he's played barely any football outside of obviously coming on against Man United at Old Trafford, and then he picks up that injury. But before that, towards the end of last season, he had a couple of games against Newcastle. He came on against Southampton. He came on. So, and then we saw him against pre-season. We had that buzz with that goal against Bilbao, and then he obviously picks up the injury post Man United. But mate, if the effects of injuries are negligible, we're cooking. We're genuinely cooking, because I've always thought of Kai Havertz at centre forward. The signs were there in that season. I will not say post that month, but he's seriously
what number point pace were we on for?
I believe it was three digits. But yeah, I mean, I think if we're looking at Arsenal's best version, that has been Arsenal's best version. And it has Kai Havertz involved. And very much, you could argue, our best attacking performer during crunch time as well. He was that good that season. And then, obviously, last season, he was run into the ground for a number of reasons because of other players who were picking up injuries. And that meant that he didn't have stability in a role as well, which on paper, it was like, oh, Kai Havertz is playing centre forward every single game. That's not what he was playing, though, every single game. There was so much more nuance to it. And then he breaks down. But now, hopefully, with the players that we do have, we can ease him into it slowly, and then he can have a big impact. But I will say, I got really excited from that Portsmouth cameo. I know it's only Pompey, but he looked really silky in the movement. And I think the only thing with Kai Havertz is he's not going to be a player who's changed. He is going to be someone who is going to frustrate the life out of you in front of goal in moments in which he misses absolute sitters. But he offers the team a lot. And it's not, revisionism. It's not. It's a player in which we all know who he is. He's going to frustrate you, but the team is a lot better with Kai Havertz in it. and that's all I have to say.
It's the efficiency of action, I think, is the thing that I really, really love about him. And being able to take a ball, okay, my job as a footballer is to get this ball up the pitch 20 yards, or my job is to connect with it doesn't need to take as long as it has taken. And by the way, sometimes that's with Jesus as well. I'm not just talking about Gyökeres. Jesus does it as well. He takes too many touches. He's in the box. He's having 2, 3, 4 touches when he just needs one. And that's what I see with Havertz. And also the presence that I think we've really, really missed. You're right. He will frustrate us 100%. But I do feel for Mikel, and I feel for our sort of striking department in general, and I include Gyökeres in it. As I said on the Instagram actually a couple of days ago, I don't think he's good enough to play centre forward for Arsenal consistently. But I think what Mikel was hoping for at the beginning of the season, and the way I can make sense of it, is he was looking at a striking department of Havertz and Gyökeres with Jesus to come back, and that is enough. That is enough. I'm sorry, that is enough to win something. I'm saying with the other players that we have, with the defensive structure that we have, with the midfield that we have. Okay, if Isak isn't available, yeah, I completely understand why he'd say, if you get me Gyökeres, I can win a league for you with that striking department. He hasn't had that, and that's been the issue. I think what we have now is all the tools back in the toolbox. We will see frustrations with all three players, 100%, but I think we will feel them less keenly because they'll be in less game states where they're frustrating. I'm hoping there's some efficiency in terms of finishing elsewhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if Havertz slowly turns the dial in his finishing. He's a very intelligent player. He's a player who knows how to get into the right spaces, and if you're Kai Havertz, what's your 1v1 analyst saying? What's Mikel saying to you? What's your instinct saying to you? What's every fan saying to you? It's your finishing. I am sure, and I don't have the data on this, but I'm sure players, and maybe this is pure copium, get slightly better at finishing as they get older. And even if he got slightly better at finishing, it would be enough, I think. I'm really, really excited for Havertz's return. George,
quickly add on to that. We're forgetting about Mikel Merino as well, right? As a four, right? When we're talking about four players in which I agree, they will all frustrate you. We've seen Jesus come back, and he's frustrated me many times already. But I think with an Arsenal team that's looking to compete on all fronts, I think we can manage the load of each player really well there, and especially someone like Kai Havertz, who has had a big injury, and Jesus, who has had a big injury as well. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's more than enough.
It's like a friendship group. You have the one guy who you can chat to for 2 hours about basically nothing. You have the one guy you can have the deep emotional conversations with. You have the one guy who you go and do an activity with, and you have another guy you never speak to, and he sends you reels on Instagram. If you want the reels on Instagram guy to have the deep conversation with you, you won't be happy, but we have the friendship group back now, and I think that's what's nice.
That is some saying.
Conclusion.
George Footsas.
If
Beat
that
that analogy, mate.
Yeah, if that was a thumbnail clipping, as everyone's wanting, the power of friendship starts at
The power of friendship.
minute.
Exactly.
Look, okay, the only thing I would push on, guys, is I think the movement is a serious point here. And I've said that I will refrain from talking about a lot of this until I see Kai Havertz back, because I feel that he will show fans quite a bit of sample as to what we're talking about here. And I do think movement, although I don't think it was as out of the blue on that question with Havertz, he did mention movement again on Martinelli. Like, the movement point was put throughout his post-match presser. And I think it's key. All the benefits that we talk about with Havertz, he will frustrate. I don't know if he's the 1-in-1 striker. And in fact, I don't even know if he's the 1-in-2 striker. In fact, I think with the purple patch, part of the problem is, it was a pretty long purple patch, by the way, but the reason that he was able to even have that is because I think that Kai Havertz is sustainable at creating his own chances. He does not rely on other people to do it. And I'm sorry, guys, but we keep beating around the bush. Part of the reason why I think the Gyökeres conversation is so pertinent here is because of the movement, how sustainable he is to create his own chances and be found, really. Because I look at what Kai Havertz has done, and he gives you different tools, no doubt. This is a guy that is the only person in our front line of those four group, in my opinion, that is really strong at being an outlet over a press, right? I think Marino can give you functionality there, but he's not great at it. Havertz is objectively somebody that can get us up the pitch by going over the top of teams. That's amazing to have back, because that's a toolbox and a tool that Arsenal hadn't had for a while. So that immediately is going to look better on everybody and every striker when you're not asking them to be something that they're not, right? Now that will be fixed. The problem with the Kai Havertz thing is, do you guys remember that one point in which he leases Nani Madueke centrally? I've had a lot of arguments on Twitter as far as Bukayo Saka that I felt has been quite disrespectful to the man. And I look at that movement, and it's the perfect example as to what the impact a Havertz has and his movement will have, ignoring output on the output of the team, and why dynamic movement in general opens opportunities for people to get central and closer to goal. That receiving that he pulls out of the pocket, it's not just that he drops deep, guys. This isn't just a Verts, a false nine that does that. If you notice, when he does the half turn, he does a half skip volley to delay his pass with enough time to allow Nani the one or two steps to come inside, as opposed to maintaining the same running pattern that would keep Nani wide had it been another striker I won't name. That delay and half step volley before he releases the pass, it's the timing, the intelligent, and the running mechanics. I don't want to talk about skills, technique, none of those things, because what we're talking about is decision making. We're talking timing of runs, when to release a pass, when to drop out, when to pin a center back properly. And to me, part of my frustration with everything is, if we're being honest, a lot of the Gyökeres recruitment was in mind that he would have those things done, right? Like, when we're talking about this striking group, guys, it's an incredibly prime age striking group. In fact, nearing on the point of one of the oldest in the squad. Like, if you look at it positionally, striking and center forward is the most experienced group in the squad right now. And so when we're debating these things, I don't think it's fair to ask an experienced gap to happen in decision making, in timing, and those things. And that to me is, I think, where the frustration lies. Look, I maintain Havertz looked brilliant. I think a lot of it was also we were starved from something that we hadn't had in so long. And I do think the fact that he's a different striker will make the entire group look good, because you're not asking that striker to look like somebody else. You're not asking them to be an apple when they're an orange. Yeah. But there is, I think, something to be said for movement. Even the disarming runs that he makes to get on the blind side, to attack the front post, asking your striker to basically zigzag, quote unquote, to Jon Snow. Why did Jon Snow run straight as opposed to not zigzagging? It's a funny way of basically saying, why can't you create your own space? And I think that's the minimum demand for any striker that I would make, whether you're 21, 28, or somewhere in the middle. And I think that's going to be the biggest jump in the Kai Havertz conversation. We will finally have more movement and ability to create your own chances. I don't know if he'll finish them, but we will sustainably create more, not just from himself, Kai, but also his delay, those little half jumps that he does.
Yeah.
Will get our right wingers and our other forwards closer and central to goal.
I think so, and that's probably less articulately than you. What a lot of people are saying in terms of what they're seeing in Arsenal's attack, and I wonder whether this will be a big thing for Havertz's rep, with a lot of fans sort of going like, oh yeah, like, okay, maybe he isn't the best finisher in the world, but actually, do you remember that sort of run where we were stodgy or whatever? We were winning games, but we were stodgy, and we come in to see Kai Havertz, and yeah, okay, maybe he is never going to be that 35, 40 goal a season striker. I think also, and Mikel had this phrase ages ago, which I absolutely love, and I think people do forget, there is an emotional component to decision making. And when people talk about joystick coaches or whatever, Mikel he's just not that. But people think he is, and okay, fine. But Mikel isn't in every player's mind going make this decision, this exact decision. He can tell them, here's what I think you should do. In this situation, I think you should do this. But ultimately, the player has to make up their own mind, and they do. And the first thing that Kai Havertz comes onto the pitch, the first ball is David Raya long to Kai Havertz because he knows he's got it. Yeah. And there is an emotional component to these things. And I think, again, not to kill Gyökeres, but because there are certain things, and I also think a lot of this is confidence. I really think a lot of the Gyökeres conversation now comes down to confidence, because he is the level he's performing at now is not even the Gyökeres who started the season. There's a lot of confidence issues going into this. So I'm not here to kill him, but when you are 33rd for possession loss out of 33 Premier League strikers, when you are 30th for dual success out of 33 Premier League strikers, that has an impact on the players around you. It's not just you yourself, it's the decisions. It's Noni Madueke making that run off Havertz, going, I know I'm going to be found. And that's the other aspect here, is players will see how Havertz plays and sort of note how he's going to bring them into play and start making those movements and counter movements and stuff. So yeah, I think there's a big thing there. You just feel, that player's got me, and I'm going to do this action, and that makes the whole, similar to what you're saying, George, the whole attack changes because of that. Just
to quickly add on to that, I think for Gyökeres, it could be the best thing to happen for him with Kai Havertz coming back, because it takes off a lot of pressure on him. There is something in which the online, and how the mainstream has projected certain things in terms of the occupation of centre backs, and you've started to see the likes of TNT Sports and some of these big platforms kind of latch onto that as well, because it is something that's heavily talked about. I think that is also having an effect in terms of the criticism that has become a lot more profound. I do think that there is an element of that, because then people are starting to watch him a lot more closely, and he's clearly a player who's just really struggling. Like that, I agree. We shouldn't beat around the bush. We shouldn't kill the player as well, because he is struggling confidence-wise. But right now, it's like over the past few games, when we looked at it, we looked at Wolves, Everton, Brighton at home, Aston Villa at home. These are the games in which we said, okay, Gyökeres, we need to see more from you. And we've not seen it. The sad thing is he's not getting a tune out of the decent centre-backs, right? The decent centre-backs. He's not going to get a tune out of the top echelon of centre-backs in the Konates and Van Dijks outside of our two, So, and because he's had, there's the lack of a Kai Havertz and Jesus, who I do think physically doesn't look anywhere close to the player that we saw in his heyday. Especially when you look at him from a pressing standpoint, he's not as intense in his runs there. There's been a lot more strain, I think, on Gyökeres to start games consistently. And I think with someone like Kai Havertz there, it takes off the pressure, a little bit of that pressure off him. And also, I do wonder, coming off the bench against tired legs, that might just be a lot better for him as he starts to build that confidence.
I think so. And I think it is a lot confidence now. I just think he needs some time out of the team, and then we'll get back to the level that he was at the beginning of the season, where there were positives, to be clear, in his play.
Can I ask you guys a quick question? What do you think this has as an impact on Kai Havertz's contract extension talks? And when you're looking at it, as far as the problems he solves just for the team, Kai Havertz's age at this point, how maybe desirable his type of profile is for the top teams in world football. And given the size of his contract as well, all those things together, is there certain things for you guys that Kai needs to hit? How does Kai's return not just impact the team, but also the squad building in a sense moving forward?
For me, I think this is a really good question, because if you'd asked me at the start of the season,
Yeah.
as much as I love Kai Havertz, it's a big season for Kai Havertz because of his contract situation, because of the wages that he's on as well.
Yep.
But now it's kind of like Kai Havertz is becoming an integral part of, again, the squad. That's because of what we've unfortunately seen from Gyökeres so far since he's came to the club. But Kai Havertz still needs to prove himself because he's been out for a year. You know, I don't think that Arsenal should just give Kai Havertz a new deal, without him proving from now to the end of the season that he can be available. And if he's available, I have no doubt that he will showcase his quality. You know, that for me is the big thing. Right now, I'm sitting here uncertain of the Kai Havertz that we will get. Because, like I said, it was great against Portsmouth. 1, it's Portsmouth. 2, it's a 10-minute cameo. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those ones where, yeah, it certainly changed the world. But it's one of those ones where, yeah, I think he still needs to prove himself from now to the end of the season. But it's a bit more of a struggle here because you've got the 3 centre forwards that you've mentioned, Alex. There's an uncertain element to all of them.
Definitely.
You know, so-
but I think, and the 4, as you mentioned earlier, I think with 4 we can do something. 4 players. You'd hope so. The other player who came out of the Portsmouth game that I think was kind of smelling of roses was Ethan Nwaneri, who I thought was terrific. We did a little section on Martinelli on the instant reaction, so I don't want to cover that ground again here. We didn't really focus that much on Nwaneri. I thought he had a really good afternoon. I thought he grew into the game. I liked the technical efficiency in central areas to take it and turn and go quickly. Again, as we know, we don't really have that in the team. Rohan, I'll come back to you first. I think the question, and a lot of the reporting around Nwaneri has been like, he doesn't want to loan. He wants to stay here. It feels like he's going to learn more from being around a title challenge and that sort of stuff, which I rate. I like that. You know, I personally, if you were asking me if I've had a sort of a choice, I would right now hit the loan button. But I think that probably would come also with a signing, because I think in terms of legs, we're a little bit short. I also don't necessarily see it as like Nwaneri. I don't want him to be a winger, but I don't see him limited, especially in this version of Arsenal's midfield, as he has to be a right 8 and that's the only thing he can be. I think he can drop into central areas quite deep and be useful for us. Obviously, on paper, he's going to start as the right 8, but I think he can drift. I think he can be useful for us in some kind of midfield composition through the rest of the season. I was mainly just really pleased that he took the opportunity. That you could understand after sort of the minutes he's had so far that he comes into it just sort of feeling, well, I'm not getting back in the team, so who cares? And it's only Portsmouth and blah, 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 blah. Not that he would have thought that, but you know what I mean? There's an element of that, and maybe there's another young player who sort of maybe does feel that. I loved that he took his opportunity with both hands. It was a really, really good performance.
He deserved G&A, didn't he? That it was a performance that deserved output. That was the only annoyance I had. For your performance deserves something there, because you looked at someone like Noni Madueke, who I thought some hot moments, some cold moments, but he walks away with 2 assists. But Ethan Nwaneri was much better than Noni Madueke, and I do think the point that you made about him as an all-phase midfielder. I think Ethan Nwaneri, some of his performances this season in the Premier League, when he's been given the opportunity, against Nottingham Forest when he came on, against Leeds when he came on, he was really good. I don't think we should forget this. Go and watch those games back. Against Nottingham Forest, he had Elliot Anderson marking him. He was running Elliot Anderson all over the pitch. And that's Elliot Anderson as someone who is regarded as, the top midfield performers this season, and someone who could be starting for England in the World Cup, So I think for me, it's just the way he travels with the ball and how he carries it through the thirds, and you feel like something's going to happen. I always feel with Ethan, he's got that trademark finish when he cuts inside and he's going to bend it into the far corner. He's going to at least test the goalkeeper. We obviously didn't see it against Portsmouth, but I just like the impetus, just like the verticality at which he plays with. And he's someone in which I think, as Arsenal fans, I'm thinking of Ethan Nwaneri in the second half of the season, thinking he's barely going to play, really, given, the depth that we have in the midfield positions and also in the wing. So he should go out on loan. That's best for his development. Mm-hmm. But he, as a player, also knows what's best for him. And from what I'm reading, when he's saying, like, I want to learn with the group, I want to be involved in this title race. And I've been someone who has always had a bit of anxiety when I've thought about how big our squad is. Thinking, how's he going to get minutes? And there's always the opportunity in which, we've seen so far this season, we've seen the previous season, injuries can happen just like that. And then before you know it, you become an integral member again. So that's where I'm maybe a little bit apprehensive of. I do want him to go out loan because I want him to play, but then we still might need him, even with the depth that we have. But yeah, I was so happy for him. I'd say like my top 3 performers from yesterday: Martinelli, Marino, and Ethan Nwaneri.
Yep. So, Marino was like, we're not going to focus on him, but yeah. Marino was really, really good. George, you were smiling at the top of that, and I presume thinking about your Luka Modric take. I'm going to ask this in a slightly different way because I think it's an interesting one. Not do you think Ethan will have to develop into more of a kind of all-phase midfielder to get into this team? No, sorry, that was the question. Do you think, not do you think he will, do you think he will have to get into this team? Good podcast hosting. Because I think there's an element here where we maybe in our minds not pigeonhole him, but think of him more as this kind of attacking midfielder. But I think back to his interview where when he signed his new contract, and he said, "I'm a very versatile player. I think I'm going to play anywhere across the front 5, and I'm ready to do what the manager needs." I wouldn't be surprised to see, yes, on the left, but also more kind of Odegaard-y stuff, dropping deep and stuff. And I think there's a level of efficiency on the ball when he takes it and turns, and how quickly he can get his pass off and how his accuracy of his passing from deep and stuff, where I think when I'm watching what Odegaard does at his best, that I can see Nwaneri doing that and adding more in terms of a threat further forward, so more of an all-phase player. Is he going to have to be that to get into this team?
Yeah, I smile only because, I may have said, I see him as that primarily, but also it would only help him in some of the biggest things that I think he struggles with, where Ethan is a very instinctual player. And I actually don't think that we do a good enough job of platforming our instinctual players in the squad. And I'll just maybe tug on that tether a bit more. Ethan is somebody that in the first 5 seconds, that burst on receiving to turn and hit, whether we're talking about a Martinelli, that's a little bit of an instinctual player, these guides that are very explosive, that need 1-2 touch, the short backlift guys. As much as we don't recruit them, I don't know if we're a team that platforms them equally as well. That's a criticism on us as far as coaching, because I think I want to recruit it, but then I have to think back to myself, okay, how many of those players have actually been super successful during Arteta's tenure? And I think there's a little bit less of them than more of them. I'm looking at your Joe Willocks, the ones that are really these explosive athletes that really, they're kind of like the roaming Ramseys, but very specific in terms of output, these explosive talents. And Ethan had to become something else if he was to work in this team. First thing I want to say is this was probably his most complete out-of-possession performance that I've seen Ethan play in the first team. It was very snappy, his response to triggers against a very physical Pompey team as well. It was
Pompey.
There we go. It was really good to see. It was really good to see. And I think that we're seeing a player also remind us of his talent, which I always love to see. And I think his comments as far as staying, they actually maybe are a reminder of how much trophies affect players more than we give it credit for. I know I love to talk Wiltor and Kanu-esque depth, but the impact guys of winning trophies is that Ethan's 200 minutes are more valuable than the 800 minutes in a team in which he may not be platformed or recognized or, is working through issues. I mean, it's not just sometimes, and again, I'm here saying I want it alone, so I'm not going to say in a sense I told you so, but it's more of the sense of maybe minutes aren't equal in development, and that's not always the same for every player. So when we build our squad buildings and our management, by the way, this applies to Mark Gahey, it's not just development. You're talking about players, and you got to start to consider, is every minute the same under the same context? Are 200 minutes of a trophy winning team the same as no winning in a full 3,000 minutes? What would a player like to look back on in his career to do? And, I respect that. I respect the hell out of Ethan for that. And he's not like this outwardly spoken personality that's going to demand those things, but he just does it through his play. I think he's a very lead by example type. And, he's going to have to lean into that as far as being an all-phase player, being able to offer us solutions in different areas of the pitch, because I believe fundamentally the players most at risk from failing in an Arteta system are the ones that are limited to one particular area of the pitch. Regardless of how great your skill is, if you consistently show that you're limited to just one aspect of play, look at Zinchenko. That is a perfect example in which being absolutely elite at a particular role, but we grew past him quite quickly because modern football doesn't allow you to do so. So I love what Ethan was, but I always felt like he had to be more. I felt like he showed it in the academy, and I think he's finally starting to show some pretty major performances, especially out of possession, because I think that was the biggest jump in this particular game that personally I noticed. I thought, wow, this guy also looks more physical than he has in a lot of other cameos. Like, guys, he was gliding, and I don't think it was just the level. Like, that was a very physical team. So that was probably the biggest benefit that I saw in that performance.
Yeah, he looked like I said it in the interaction. He looked like he's running downhill at times, which is what you want. Yeah. And I think he looks really, really fit at the minute. A couple of people saying they think he looks taller as well, which I didn't see, but interesting.
Looks more fit than Miles. I don't know if we would say that last year.
Oh, 100%. So yeah, it's really, really good. I mean, I take your point. I still would lean on the loan aspect of things and say if you can get him in like running a League One team in a kind of midfield 3 where he can be one of the deeper players or one of the higher players depending on the situation, or even in a 2, and really learn his trade in that sense. I still think that would be optimal for me in terms of playing minutes. I think that's where his game develops and getting into this team. But equally, if he wants to be around us, I think there are minutes for him. So yeah, let's see. We probably don't have time to talk about other stuff just in terms of the run of the show. So we'll do this. Rohan, we play Chelsea in the Carabao Cup tomorrow.
Chelsea. That's all they do, don't they? That's all they do. And I think Cole Palmer might be ducking.
He always ducks the Arsenal test, mate.
That's always. What I've been seeing. That's what the streets are saying.
That's what the streets are saying.
Yeah.
Give me your Chelsea lineup.
I think we should do one by one. I think it'd be good.
I'd go Raya. I think
really?
I think in a semi-final.
I'd go Kepa.
Kepa's not staying, mate. He's not staying.
Yeah.
So
but we have to ask ourselves this question, right? Do we believe Kepa?
I'm not out to make Kepa happy. I'm out to make Arsenal win.
I think we can win with Kepa.
That's nice. I don't. No,
I really
just
want
Raya's
this
a better
trophy.
player. Yeah,
I really want this trophy, and I actually think a trophy will do more for this squad than
100%.
Than anything else. More than it. Now that we're not going to do a signing, a trophy has to be, in my opinion, the goal. And if you can win that in February, that does a huge thing to the squad.
Try to get out of this one.
No. I'm saying I'd play Raya in the final. I'd play Kepa. I'd back him.
George is your pick.
No, Raya all day long.
Yeah,
for me.
Willow and Gabby. Happy with that. Gabby played 75 minutes against Portsmouth and Saliba was rested, so I think that's fine.
I would do Ben White, not Timber.
How come?
Primarily because when I look at Chelsea's biggest threat, you look at Estevao, I guess Palmer's ducking, but if you would, it would be primarily down the right side or our left. And I actually think the offensive stress would be on our left-hand side of the pitch. So there's more questions there, but I believe that there's an ability to get behind Cucurella, and I think that overload with Saka is where I want us to destroy it, because this idea that Cucurella locks down Saka
we need to change that narrative because it's actually
in this world, and he cannot mark blindside runs. So yeah, I want Ben overlapping. I want Ben stressing that side.
I would go Timber left back, Ben White right back.
Miles, a little bit from the IR before, eh?
I remember that Chelsea game, and Saka was our biggest threat, and he was 1v1 against Cucurella a number of times. And if we can create some overloads out there, I agree with you. I'm looking at our left back options. I'm not having Miles against Estevao right now. I don't think he's got it. You can't let balls bounce like that, man.
I'd go Miles.
Miles, okay. George?
And Timber.
What a great time to have Mark Gahey come in.
So good that we've just signed him.
Yeah,
That's what he was telling the Palace fans after he lost the Macclesfield. Don't worry, boys, I'm off.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not going to hide. I said it in the IR for a reason. I know why. It's probably like the stress of your 2 right back options playing, right? Like that's something to consider as far as Arsenal and injuries go. It's not the best idea of tempting fate, but I agree with you, Alex. Like I think Timber is the best for what I want to do. Miles, if he was fit and up to speed, would be somebody that I think can do the role similar. Yeah. But right now, and I don't know why by the way, I don't know why we haven't seen it. I know I said it on a couple IRs ago. I don't know why we haven't seen that iteration. Like Timber was no slouch at left back.
He's very good left back.
It was phenomenal. And if we needed somebody to, if we were doing a matchup against Salah, the whole purpose was putting Timber there to isolate that out. So if you want to kill that, surely that's a iteration you would use.
I guess it depends,
Mikel will never do this, by the way. Let me just be very clear.
I wouldn't do Timber left back. I think it's a case of what are you prioritizing? I think you're both prioritizing the security against Estevar, right? Yeah. The Timber left back going forward, I've never been particularly keen on.
No, it's limited, but I think it gives Rice some more space for me, maybe. Anyone disagree with Zubi, Rice, Odegaard?
No,
I agree.
Trossard, Saka?
Yep.
And now what, Alexander?
And now what, Rohan?
I'll go.
Go on.
I'd go Gyökeres.
I would go Jesus, Gyökeres second half if Havertz isn't fit. As in, I hope Havertz is fit. I would not start Havertz in this game. It's going to be so intense.
Yeah, I wouldn't start.
Havertz will be on the bench for me as an option. I would start Jesus, and if the game goes that way, I'd go Gyökeres.
If Kai was ready to go, easy Kai, pick all day long. But yeah, I'd go Gyökeres. Back in, number 14. George is...
I don't like either of the options that you guys have said.
Neither do I, mate.
We haven't mentioned. Whoa.
I'm going to say it.
Oh, I forgot about him.
I forgot about him, actually.
No, I did not, and I'm going to say it.
I've changed.
I would do Mikel Merino.
Yeah, I've changed.
And I'm sorry to have done this.
And I brought it up at the start of the pod as well.
Poor from you, really. I don't know how you waited for me.
How funny.
Okay,
that we've ended up here.
Again, let me say why, and that Mikel will never do this. So get it out. The thing is, this is going to be a very intense game. And as far as building off of what he did against Pompey, that was one of his best performances.
Are you doing that on purpose?
Yeah, now, of course.
Okay.
As far as building off his performance, I think, guys, he showed a level of, really fluid passing from that sixth position and deep. And I think that when you're looking at this Chelsea game, the space is going to be in behind from fullback cutting in. So I don't want a Gyökeres to take away that space. What makes Gyökeres brilliant is going to be the runs in behind, right? I don't want Chelsea to focus on that, and that's not the best use of threat. The run in behind for me has to be against the Saka, attacking the fullback to center back channel. I've said it so many times against Chelsea. That's their weak area. So even your Trossard, by the way, you could argue it's a game for Martinelli. I wouldn't do it, but in theory, you absolutely could, especially off the back of a hat trick and the space being between the fullback and the center back. Chelsea are so poor in that channel. I think attacking that space is where the space is, and we need a false nine that can give us quick releases. And I just think, what was that game that Mikel Merino drops off, gives you that little, was it Spurs? Was it the one with like...
What, the thing? Yeah, that was Spurs.
It was Spurs, right? I think that passage of play is primed for our wingers. So I would go Mikel Merino.
He was absolutely pants though. But
so I would do Mikel Merino.
I did Mikel Merino.
Well, there you go. Let's get to some questions on the Discord. We're going to try and come to as many as possible, so we might need to be a little bit quicker here, boys. Let's go with this one. With Havertz returning to the squad, says Tipsy on the Discord, where you get priority access to the questions. Do you think we will start to see Eze make a resurgence?
I mean, I don't think like Havertz coming back now means Eze's going to play loads more. I think irrespective, Eze is going to feature in the second half of the season and be a really important player to the team.
No, he's done.
Yeah.
He hasn't played in a few games. He's done.
And also, I don't know if you've seen it, but I did the numbers, looked at his number of minutes at Palace at this stage relative to Arsenal this season. I think Mikel kind of included his game against Chelsea for Palace this season, saying like he'd played more minutes for us than he'd played for Palace last season at this stage. If you just look at Arsenal games, he's played slightly more for Palace, but irrespective, he's came into a team, different environment, more intensity, a different methodology. He's played loads, mate, and he's going to have a big impact in the second half of the season. And I do think, that I wouldn't say like Eze and Havertz directly. What I'm more excited by is the prospect of Saka and Havertz. I know that's not the question, but Saka and Havertz were developing some serious chemistry from last season. So
I love when Mikel comes with receipts. It's so good when he's like, actually, he's played more minutes. So what are you gonna do? Let's come to this question. Dave 1996, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No. No. I hate it. Like it's a savory dish. Get your sweet in a sweet dish.
Too keen on pizza anyway, really.
Daft Punk, who leaves the club first, Havertz or Gyökeres?
Gyökeres. That's an easy one for me.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Alex, you're not being the question, man.
I'm the host, mate. I have to ask the questions. People just debating about pineapple on pizza and trying to find some. Oh, here we go. This is a good question from Saleh. Going to try again this week. I want to ask a philosophical thought experiment for the pod. Arsenal are playing their biggest rival, let's say Spurs. At half-time, by magic, every single human working for Arsenal and the rival club is swapped. Players, manager, owners and staff. They come back out wearing the opposite kits. So Saka would be in a Spurs kit. Whoever the fuck plays for them would be in their kit. The stadium, fans, chants and history all stay the same. Second half starts. Who do you support?
It's Arsenal, mate. Dominic Solanke, come on, mate.
I think if the stadium and the club and the history is, you'd have to go with that.
I'm supporting Solanke to hit a 40-yarder against David Raya.
I don't like your question.
That is an evil question.
Yeah, that's an evil question. Oh, God. No, I mean, look, you're going to do the boring answer of whoever wears the badge is like who you're going to support. Can't not act like I've got an attachment to this group. And in reality be like, that's not my player. He's still on the jersey. This is a charity match. Like I can't.
Let's make it a bit more exciting. So this is the final game of the season, right? And we need to win the league. We have to win.
Well, I'll hope for a lob or something.
Own goal FC. Don't Spurs score a lot of own goals?
They can score an own goal.
There you go.
And Arsenal can win. But yeah, well, I mean, seeing Saka in a Spurs shirt would hurt.
Yeah,
that would really, really hurt.
Imagine. Oh no, I'm not gonna say it. Actually, I'm gonna say. Imagine Saka did remember when Koscielny did that announcement video?
Oh my god!
Imagine Saka did something like that.
Have you ever? I don't think I lost my head more during that era. I was so angry with that.
Oh mate, the Socrates era.
Don't get him going again. Socrates. Do you know, I was watching the Portsmouth game that we played just before COVID where we won 2-0.
He scored a banger.
He did score a banger. Do you remember who assisted it?
Reece Nelson's got both assists.
Very good, Rohan. Very good.
I remember that game, mate. I remember it very well.
Let's do some questions from YouTube. Let's do this one. Soundpost 222. How does Alex feel about his team sacking Amorim? I mean, just generally, I hate this thing where we've got to where it's just sack after sack. I just don't like it in football. And the thing is there's always an argument. There is always you could make an argument to sack Arteta. He's top of the Premier League and Champions League. You can make an argument. Oh, he's not winning trophies, whatever. There's always an argument. But the fact that like basically you get about 6 months at this point to make any headway. Like I don't think it's conducive to anything good in sport. And I think it comes from an impatient society. I think like even like Spurs fans, for example, they're a perfect example. The majority of them want Frank out. And there's a reason for that. I understand that. You were 4th bottom last season. What are you expecting? What do you want? You were what were they, 17th? 16th? Something like that?
Around about that, yeah.
What are you expecting? Are you expecting him to win the league? So where are they at the minute? They're like, where are they?
They're like,
aren't they like 3rd from the bottom?
They're 14th, but they are 5 points off 6th. 5 points. Like, what are you expecting? And just this, and like, again, I'm not saying there's no argument for Frank to go. I'm not saying that there's no situation, Xabi Alonso, etc., or Arne Slot or whatever. Similar situation with Slot. Like, he's 4th. He won you the title last season, and like I'd say, like 50% of Liverpool fans seem to want him gone.
He's a good coach as well.
It's like, again, each individual situation you can make an argument, but it just the culture that we're in, I don't like it. I really don't.
If anything, I felt like that's the biggest indictment on the new United leadership that I've seen. It's the biggest red flag, and it's not because they've sacked the manager. It's the when for me. If you felt after your worst season that he was good enough that you were going to back, and then based off really weird comments about where there was clearly a power struggle going in which they were trying to exert on the pitch decisions after you backed the man saying you had all the power, of course he's going to be angry, and then you sack him when you're 5th. Like, the logic of it makes no sense. It's not the point that you sacked him, it's the logic why and when. And look, I don't care. I'm not a United fan, so happy days. Long may it continue. But I feel like Arsenal have given me such a playbook towards alignment that I think is not... It's why all these clubs are going to continue to muddle around. And by the way, I group that with Chelsea. I group that with Spurs until somebody is strong enough to be aligned from top to bottom. And that's why I think everybody at Arsenal, sorry, I'm just going to say it, deserve massive praise. It wasn't a given that the owners would be as trusting as they are with Mikel. It wasn't, like such a.
He's just going to say it, guys.
But yeah, I think that alignment is the reason that everybody is in this craze because, even from a Chelsea perspective, there's no reason that Maresca should have been sacked given the form and given his control of the squad. And again, it was power from the boardroom getting infiltrated to on the pitch. And it's that misalignment. As far as Frank go, I really hope, look, not that I hope because I don't want Spurs to do well, but if Spurs weather this storm, okay, and they're aligned, they will show the first of those 3 clubs, by the way, to show the most balls in being okay because they're aligned. And this will continue until somebody says, no, we are going to give it 3 years in which from a leadership position, top to bottom, we are going to maintain the course.
Mm-hmm.
And ignore the fan noise. That's the big one as well, because the pressure externally is what drives Man United and then Chelsea's as well. Like Maresca last season, Maresca's a very good coach. Like, tactically, you saw it at the Bridge against us. Very good coach. He comes from the same school as Mikel. There's obviously more nuance to it, but tactically, there's a lot of similarities there. And yeah, I mean, the Arteta situation, 1, we're very fortunate. 2, it's also a lot of luck as well, right? You need a lot of luck for it to work your way because I've always believed in Mikel from the moment he spoke in that first interview. Thought this guy gets it.
Yeah.
But if we're being honest, if we look at that period, and it's not, I wouldn't have sacked him, but that period before Boxing Day 2020, there is a very strong case that you could make to sack Mikel Arteta there. You can, I'd say all 3 of us are always staunch Mikel Arteta fans, right? There's a strong case you could have made there, but they gave him the time. And then from that, the thing is, it's like from that Boxing Day fixture all the way to the end of the season,
he grew.
I know we finished 8th, but we'd accumulated the 2nd most points in the league So the trends and the signs were always there, but we had to go through that period in which we were absolutely rubbish beforehand. And there were a lot of mitigating circumstances there, but it is luck that we had the board there to stick by him there. If we had a Man United board, if we had a Chelsea board, he would not be there. And then what happens? That's where we've struck. That for me is like where I feel really grateful. That's the moment.
Yeah.
So,
but it again, it's the word both of you said. It's alignment. Someone like Liam Rosenior, look like the proof will be in the pudding. But again, it's similar to Mikel. He speaks really, really well. You can tell he's someone. Even just images of him coming into the press room and shaking everyone's hand. You can tell there's obviously a presence there. Someone I said it in 2020 when he was on Sky. I have a tweet on my Diff Knock account where I was like, Liam Rosenior speaks really well. He's going to do well in the game. You just know immediately. So then, okay, you have this young coach. You have a guy who's done really well at Strasbourg. I think he got them into Europe for the first time in 50 years or whatever it is. Or, like he's got a really good track record up to this point. Mikel's version was probably being an assistant under Pep and all those sorts of, okay, well, this guy's got a big reputation. So what do you do now? How old's Rosenior? 40 max? 38, something like that? Young. You have to give him time. If you're going to do this, you have to give him time. But he won't be. He simply won't be. And he'll be seen as another failure, whatever. Yes, we're lucky, but it comes from an ownership. And what I also don't understand is what are United and Chelsea and Spurs on these? What are they learning from looking at Pep and Liverpool and Arsenal? Those are probably the three references. They've all been given over 5 years, at least, their managers. And they've had success. So pick someone, back them, align your structure with it. If you don't believe in them from the start, then that's fine. You're done. Don't hire them. But it's this alignment thing and this thing of like Xabi Alonso is a perfect example. Real Madrid have got a young coach who went undefeated in Germany. He won the Bundesliga over Bayern Munich undefeated. He's a bad coach, is he? No. He's obviously not a bad coach. He's coming into a new dressing room. He needs time in a Galactico culture where it's like, it's your choice. If you don't want to change the Galactico culture, that's fine. Don't hire Xabi Alonso. That's on you. And the owners don't get enough stick because it's always the managers that you have to face the media, whatever. I think there should be way more interviews with sporting directors, with owners. That they should be the guys coming out and speaking and saying, okay, here's the reason. And then you'd realise a lot of what they're saying is smoke and mirrors and the managers have to face it. Xabi Alonso, it's like, if you're going to hire him, you have to back him changing the culture. He doesn't, you don't back him. He can't change the culture because of course he can't because he hasn't got your support. That's it. And you've wasted 6 months. So it's the owners.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I think it's lucky that we've had the owners to be able to do that because it's not normal what they've done, right? That for me is where I'm really grateful. Because there's an alternative universe there in which we have become a team that is chopping and changing managers, and I've never liked that. Unai Emery is a really good example, right? My intuitive feeling and looking at the data, looking at the performances, his first season at Arsenal, I knew this guy wouldn't do it. But I felt, let's give him a bit more time. Let's give him a bit more time. And it wasn't the right decision. He should have been sacked that first year from what we saw. But I've always been someone, and it feels like, because all three of us, we knew nothing apart from Arsene Wenger, at Arsenal. So we didn't have to feel and be in that conversation of, whether we need to, with the new manager, how much time do we give him, etc. But yeah, I mean, I've always been someone in which you got to give a manager a bit more time, and that is a bit sad from
or don't hire them.
Yeah.
Or don't hire them. It's like, if you're not going to give them time, literally don't just get someone you don't care about. Okay, whatever. Yeah. But if you're going to go, this is a project, whatever. Why give up on it after 6 months? It's pointless.
You know what, guys? I also just think, not to get too meta, Arsenal are uniquely positioned as a club to understand this more than any club in world football, given Arsene Wenger's reign and the lessons from it. I look at his reign. I'm not going to get into a huge monologue, but it is more of the case that we saw a manager that believed and lived those promises. Like, he walked the walk, you know what I mean? It was more of a case that he believed in development. Like, we built ourselves on this idea, and the next phase was to have a youthful generation to go and compete with different people. We kept losing our stars. There was a level of patience that needed to happen. And, Arsene Wenger did it with his eyes tied behind his back in a lot of ways from upper management. And so we saw the club was able to see the ramifications for that for quite a long time. I don't know if Chelsea, ever since Abramovich, I don't know if they're able to understand that as a club. United, it's an example of a manager that just won't go away. Ferguson's everywhere in terms of how it's entrenched. The media, which I think is a problem, like the Gary Nevilles, the Rio Ferdinand, the level of impact that voice has. We are very lucky. Arsene respected us to take a step away. Very lucky. And I don't know, if I'm honest, if Arsene stuck around. And there was plenty. People were calling for him to do it. There was plenty of reason for him to stick around. We recruited his disciples, but we allowed his disciples to be their own person. In a sense, I'm looking at United, and they're bringing back Carrick, who, by the way, I think is a fine coach. But Ole, like all of these things,
there's no one else. You have
there's
to
no
play for
one
United.
else, guy.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Mikel, who is a disciple of Wenger, really is as much of a disciple of Pep. He went off to do his own journey. It's not the same thing. And I think Arsenal as a club had that distance that United never gave it, can never do. I mean, you have the same damn opinions with Wayne Rooney and all these old guys having the same repetitive, it's the mentality, conversations with Roy Keane. And guys, I genuinely think that has affected their decision-making as a club just in general. They've been unable to modernize their approach because people in power listen to those voices and they've stuck around. And we've been able to, I think, move on in both a respectful but a really healthy way. And I hope, I'm going to end with this, I hope that when we win the title, Arsene Wenger comes back for that.
Yeah, he should.
Because he should. I hope so.
And Granit Xhaka, mate, get him back.
Oh, let's bring them all back.
Them all
Everybody, get Xhaka
alone.
I think we are we were lucky with Wenger, and yeah, maybe this is a good place to leave it. Is we've been lucky with this ownership, and I'm not in any way saying KSC are perfect. They're not perfect, but
No.
I've always said whenever there's been big attacks on them, I said, okay, who's perfect? Show me a perfect ownership who would never have done, would never have been involved in the ESL conversations or, have got everything right. You won't find one. So pick your problems, basically. And I think, in terms of the problems that we do have with them, there are issues, of course, and there's been moments they should have invested in, they shouldn't, and loads of things that we could go through, but generally they are pretty good. Let's do one more question.
A fun one.
By the way, that was one of the all-time George Vuksas malapropisms, by the way. When you said ears behind your back, ears tied behind your back. Great stuff. We know what you meant. Is playing... Oh, here we go. This is a good question.
Yes, I want a fun one. I want that gets me fired up.
You'll like this one.
God.
FM7Fin995. Is playing Saka in different positions a genuine option?
For God's sake. You said it was...
I've won! I have won!
God damn it. You said it was going to be a fun one. I'm not answering.
I win again.
What position, Alex?
I win again. Left back. No, look, we've discussed it. We've discussed it before. I still think on the inside he'd cook. On both sides, on the inside he'd cook. I still think he'd cook on the left, just because I think he's I think he'd cook at basically every position other than centre back. I think he'd be a good false nine, to be honest. I've never ruled it out, and I think with, like, for example, the Liverpool game, I felt we needed a Madueke on that side with Kirkes, and Saka somewhere else. I think with the amount of space we had centrally because they were now marking our three, I think he could have cooked that game. But go on, Rohan.
I don't mind him in game, but he does this. It's just. I do believe that Bukayo Saka should stay on the right wing predominantly. I don't mind him moving in game to other positions, but I still think that, he's got so much to offer in this team at the right wing, and I do think that the team is primed for an explosion with Saka there.
Let me attack it.
That's
from
an
this.
awful answer, but
I'll just flat out say
right
no.
on the fence.
I'll get off the fence. No, he should stay. He should absolutely stay at right wing. And if anything, I would push back on the question in another way, where does he have versatility? Yes. I think anybody that rolls their eyes, I don't think it was a question of does he lack versatility? 100% he has it. The decision of should you or should you not is about how much value you're going to get from that move. I maintain us moving towards getting Saka central more often, more frequently, changing even how he's used currently at right wing more to promote him inside more does more for this team than the odd versatility benefit that it would in a game. So if you feel like it's a Madueke game on the right wing and you move Saka, now you've got dual threat. I think the idea is defining that threat. And is that dual threat more than Saka at his best on the inside? And I maintain Saka at his best on the inside is the biggest threat in the team and bigger than a dual threat. People may disagree, but that's just where I stand on it as far as the argument goes. Like, I think that's a 10 out of 10 on impact. And, you know, you may gain a 7 out of 10 on both sides. But I still think having somebody that's going to consistently impact games there is what I prefer.
I don't know. I think if you're going to do that, if you're going to put Saka in, you need someone to hold width, and that doesn't get the most out of Madueke. So that's why I'm looking at other positions. And when I say inside, I mean like right inside. So that I'll be looking at the left. I'll be looking at left back as well. But yeah,
I think they can play together, by the way. I'd love to show that. I think Madueke and Saka together on the same side is something that I can see.
That will cook. Rohan, you going to get off the fence?
I'm always sitting on my fence.
No, see, Alex, I told you.
We'll finish there. We'll finish there, chaps. Thank you for joining us. We will be there. Thank you for joining us on the Cannon Podcast. We'll be back for... Are you doing a rewatch, Rohan?
For Chelsea.
Yep. So
we're
we'll
doing a rewatch for Chelsea.
Right. We'll be back for the instant reaction after the Chelsea game. Then we'll have a rewatch out for that. Then George and I will have a scouted out. Then there'll be an instant reaction to the Nottingham Forest game. So much content for you people, lucky people. And a reminder that we will be doing a Rate My Take soon. So patrons, YouTube members, look out for that. We've also got Director's Box phone in. So if you want to become a director, you can chat to us directly just before the Chelsea game. I think it's at, I don't want to say something wrong. I think it's at 6 o'clock-ish. Check that on Wednesday. UK time. All those are UK time, of course. Thank you, Rohan.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thank you so much for watching. And thanks for keeping Saka at left back.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed.
Electrifying. Ferocious.